Okay, for doing a self-portrait, what you want to do is get a image that has some high contrast so you can see a lot of light and shadow, and try to do a pose that's a little bit unique or something that's got a good composition, a lot of angles and crisscrossing lines. To start out, what you want to do is just kind of sketch in your negative space. So what I'm looking for here is the shapes outside of the actual image itself. I'm not really looking at the elements. I'm looking more outside. Okay, what I did is I drew this shape outside of my face. It's just the negative space rather than trying to just draw in the shape of my face to start with. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start modifying and what I'm doing is, as you can see, I go outside the lines, which is fine. You want to just kind of give yourself a quick sketch, something that you can adjust as you go. So I want to kind of just look at my angles and draw in the angles. So I've got my eyebrows kind of create this angle, and then the hairline creates an angle coming up. There's kind of a cutoff. And then I want to look for this space here between the hairline and my eyebrow. And I want to make sure that I get all the space right in between each element. So I've got a little crease here, and there's a little shadow. So you can draw in shadows because you'll see these shapes, kind of a square right here at an angle, and then it kind of connects down. Okay, so I kind of have this S shape on the side of my face, and I want to draw that in. You want to look for shapes that are easier to draw than each element, like eyes, nose, things like that, because it gets a little too difficult at that point. Okay, now what I want to do is, I've got a nice shape here. On the inside of my nose. So I want to draw that in. This will be a nice shadow area. You can kind of just hash in some shape. And as you can see, this already starts to create my eye. So I created this shape in here, and then my eye kind of comes back and creates this little shadow on the eyelid. And it's kind of this square on the bottom and then a rounded area up top. You want to tie it all together, so I'm going to darken it a little bit. And my eye is just slightly opened, so I'm looking down. So I'll just kind of put a little slit right here for my eye. Okay, and then we've got the shadow. Okay, now I want to kind of define this bright area underneath my eye a little bit more, so I'm just going to kind of sketch in this bright area. Okay, and then it gets a little bit darker through here. Okay, one of the hardest parts is drawing the nose and nostrils. So you want to look for your shadows. Got a shadow that comes all the way down and it kind of curls back. I've got this bright area right here, and then the shadow comes, it kind of curls back a little bit. Okay, now you want to look between the eye, bottom of the eye, and the top part of the nose, and you want to try to measure that space to get that accurate. So it's a pretty small space. This is kind of a part where people kind of lose some of the proportion. They usually make the nose a little too long or a little too short. One way to measure is between the eye and the top of the side of the nose. Okay, and another thing you can look for is where does the edge of the nose, the longest point out, line up with the eye. So if you look at the image, it kind of lines up right in front of the eye. So you can kind of sketch a little line down here. And then darken that spot by the nose. Okay, and then the nostril comes up. Okay, I'm just going to start defining a little bit more. So once you kind of get these shapes put in, you can start defining. There's a crease right here at the end of the eyebrow. Start defining your elements a little bit more. So I've got an eyebrow here. Eyelashes on the top of the eye are dark. Okay, the nostril's dark, so I'm just going to darken that up. Okay, I'm going to define the nose a little bit more now. Okay, so now you can start to see the shape . Okay, now on the outside of my face, there's this dark area. So right in here is really dark, so I'm just going to kind of sketch that in a little bit. It's probably the darkest area on my face. That and right here above the eyebrow are the two darkest areas. So I just want to, kind of show myself where these dark areas are. Okay, and this area over here is quite dark. Okay, now a very difficult part in drawing a face is getting the lips right. So you want to try to make sure you're looking at your negative space. Look out here, make sure you have this angle right. A lot of times what will happen is people will draw this and then straight down, and it will make the lip kind of look a little too flat or indented. You want to look at your negative space, look out here where all this space is, and look at the angle that's created right in here. So the angle is kind of a 90-degree angle, set on its side here. And then again, look at the angle that's created by the lips themselves. Comes in like that, and goes back out, and then measure this outside lip area and where it connects up with the nose. It kind of connects up with this shadow. So you can even draw this little line here to make sure you've got these little angles right. Okay, and it's rounded. And curves in like that. Another thing, you can measure this area of the chin with your nostril. As you can see, it kind of lines up with the nostril, so you want to make sure that it's coming in far enough and then lining up with some of the elements above that you've already drawn in. This will help you get all your proportions right. Okay, now for the angle of the mouth, it kind of comes down. What you want to look for is this lip area. You want to kind of look at the shape that this creates right in here. You can even draw it in. I've got, the lip comes up a little bit, so you can kind of draw on the top lip. But what you want to look for, there's a little bit of a shadow coming down here, creating kind of a triangle. You've got the front of your lip, but this right here kind of creates a triangle, so you can draw that in. And then again, there's almost like a parallel line for the crease beside the nose. That's created over here, and then it curls in. So you've got this triangle, and then you've got this parallel line, and then just measure that space in between to make sure you're getting it right. Okay, so now I want to make sure I'm getting all the angles right of the lip. There's quite a dark line underneath the lip, so I'm going to define that with a nice dark line. And then the edge of the mouth, again, you want to measure. The edge of the mouth comes out a little bit further than the edge of the nose. So I'm going to draw that line there and bring this down a little bit further. Okay, so now we're getting a pretty nice defined shape and face here. What I want to do is I want to look at my shadows. There's another shadow, kind of comes in here. And all these really brighter areas you want to leave completely white. The shadow areas you can kind of just scribble in a little bit. So we've got a really bright area here, a kind of bright areas right in here. A bright area on the nose, and then a bright area on the forehead. Okay, now what we want to look for is connecting the chin and the hand. So the finger creates a nice little shape here in the negative space. You've got your lip coming out here, and it comes down, and it comes up a little bit, and then straight, almost straight across, but kind of at a downward angle. And again, you want to look for relationships. This edge of the finger lines up with the nose, the edge of the nose. So the very edge of the top part of the finger lines up with the nose, and then you want to look for the angle. The angle comes down like this. It comes outside of this, this line. Okay, and then the shadow creates kind of this, it's almost like a cube shape. So this is dark right in here. Okay, now again, you want to look for the other finger creating an angle. And it's almost square right on top here. And then it comes all the way out. And again, we're looking at this angle right here, created by the fingers. It's a really nice straight line. Okay, now the chin. If you look at the chin, it's kind of smushed up against the finger. So how do we show that? Well, you want to show the little shadow being created right here by the skin being smushed up. And that shadow carries right up close to the lip. There's another shadow right here created by the lip. It comes right down here. And then it circles around. So this is dark right here. And then you can almost see this shape up through here. It's almost like an S. Okay, now I'm going to go straight down. If you're looking at the angle of the finger, it goes almost straight down. So we can just draw a line. Doesn't matter how long right now. We'll touch it up as we go. We just want to have a nice straight line. And then we can work with that angle, or with this straight line. The chin, actually the finger comes down a little bit further. But the chin goes right above this second knuckle. So it creates this nice little negative space. And again, the angle, you want to look at your negative space. You're drawing this shape in here rather than the bottom of the neck. And that flares out. Like that. Okay, so we've got this shape kind of sketched in. Now we want to bring the finger out a little bit further. Like I said, it's a straight line down. And a lot of this is in shadow, so we'll kind of just show the shadow. Okay, now the finger, the bottom part of the finger below the second knuckle, or the first knuckle, however you're looking at it, kind of creates this cone shape. So that's what you want to focus on, is creating that cone shape. We can kind of draw in a few more shadows. Shadow right here on the finger, right by the chin. Okay, now the finger, the second finger, or the third finger I should say, kind of rounds out. You want to look really close at your image. The image I'm working from is it's kind of blurry through here, so it might be a little bit difficult to see, but you want to draw in your shadows, and that will help you a lot. So just look at the shadow instead of the finger, and draw the shape of that shadow. Okay, so I just drew the shape, and then, there's a fingernail here, but we're not going to worry about that too much for right now. Okay, now since I've got the shadow in, you want to look at the distance between the shadow and the next shadow of the next finger, and it's just a small area. So you just want to draw in that area, just slightly sketch it in, and you want to get your angles right. See, what I did here is I kind of have my angle wrong. It should be, just erase this. It should be more straight down. Same with these fingers. So I'm just going to draw this line here, indicating that it needs to be a little bit more straight down rather than out. So same with over here. I'll just bring that knuckle up a little bit. Okay, and this line is a little more straight out. These ones are sharper up, and this one's more straight out. Okay, and then we've got a really dark shadow in between these fingers. And you really can't see a lot of these fingers in here, the pinky. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my focus, and I'm just going to erase a little bit out here. Got a few too many shadows. And I'm going to refocus my attention to the angles on the hand on the outside. So we've got this angle created right here, that angle, and then it's kind of rounded at the end. Okay, and now you want to look at this angle. Okay, and you want to carry that line straight through up to the finger. And then this final angle is straight out. And the last knuckle is rounded. Okay, so just want to tie that in together. Okay, now the hand, one thing with hands is a lot of times people will make hands too small. So if you're gonna do a hand, it's better to do it bigger than smaller. If you make the hand too big, that's more readable than a hand that's too small. If you do a hand that's too small, people will catch that. If you do a hand that's a little too big, people will overlook that because a lot of times people have different size hands, and bigger hands are more appealing, I guess, to people. So if someone sees a big hand, it won't hurt the image at all. If you do a hand that's too small, people will pick that out really easily. Okay, so you want to make sure that your hand is big enough. If not, just go back and make some adjustments. Okay, now I'm just going to draw the shadow area. Okay, it's really dark in through here. Okay, and the outside of the hand, again, you want to look at this negative space. Okay, we've got this rounded shape out here, and it comes straight down, curves around, and then the sleeve comes back out. And it's almost a point, and then it comes back almost straight across, and then it curves up. Okay, and all this area on the hand is dark. Okay, what I'm going to do now is extend my fingers a little bit. Like I was saying before, you want to make sure your hand's long enough or big enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take each finger and extend it down a little bit. Okay, and then we've got all this dark area. The outside of the hand has some shadows. And then, of course, the pinky has a shadow, just like the other fingers. Okay, I'm just going to tidy up this little edge here. I'll bring this finger out a little bit more and bring the palm in just a tad. Okay, so we've got these shadows on the fingers. What you can do now is just take your eraser, make sure you've got the bright areas of the fingers. Okay, and that will give it a more three-dimensional look. Okay, so we've got the hand. What we want to do now is look for other areas that we can draw in easily. So we've got this shape of the neck. It kind of comes all the way down and then curves out like that because of the shadow. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to look at my sweatshirt that I'm wearing, and there's a crease that comes down, and I'm just drawing this. I'm drawing this shape in by the hand. So I'm drawing the outside edge of that shape. And draw the sleeve. And then at the corner of this hand, the arm comes out like that. And you kind of got your sleeve as well. I'm just going to darken this right here just to create some contrast. Okay, now there is a shadow that comes up like that. Then I want to measure this space for the next line, and that comes a little bit, has a little bit of curve and then straight, almost straight down. Okay, and then you want to measure the next line, which is the shirt underneath. And now you can kind of draw in this highlighted area, this almost like a crescent shape. And again, you can measure different relationships. The outside highlight of this eye kind of comes down and should line up with the shirt, the inside shirt. So I want to just adjust my distances a little bit here. Okay, this comes down and lines up with the crescent, the highlight on the neck. So we got that crescent right here. Okay, and then we'll measure out our distances from there. Got the t-shirt. I almost had it right before, just a little bit off. Okay, so now we'll just okay, now we've got a shadow on the shirt right here. That's dark. Got this one that's dark. And then there's a shadow behind the hand. And we can paint all these things in later. I'm just gonna give you an idea for the drawing. Okay, so now we've got a pretty good drawing. I want to move back up here. Look for my angle on the head, the hairline, and the hair comes out a little bit. And I like to draw a scribbly line along the edge to indicate hair. And the sideburn kind of has an angle slightly up. It's not straight across, it's just up a little bit. Okay, now we want to look for the ear. The ear lines up with the eye in most cases, so you can draw a straight line out. In this instance, the ear is slightly above the eyelashes. So I want to draw a line out here, and the top of the ear should be right about here, just slightly above the eyelashes. So I'll finish the sideburn so I can get my distances right here. The sideburn comes up and kind of comes out like that. Okay, and then the ear has a nice rounded shape up top, and then there's an angle. It's a rounded angle, but I like to draw this little line here. The ear kind of follows that angle. And then comes back in pretty sharply. And it's about this far below the sideburn. So you want to draw this line in here for the distance of the ear. Okay. There's kind of an angle on the highlighted part of the ear. Where the ear comes up into the hole is in line with the sideburn. So you want to look for that. And then where the sideburn kind of comes out is where the top of the hole is. Okay, now we can start defining the ear a little bit more. There's a shadow in the ear right here. I'm drawing the outside part of the ear now. And this is pretty easy, you can just kind of follow the line. Okay, and this comes down a little bit further, and then in this part of the ear kind of goes down in, and then there's this dark area. Okay, so the shadow on the side of the face gets a little bit darker, you know, down behind the chin. but all of this is in shadow as well. Okay, now a very difficult thing is to get this outside shape right. You want to come back down here to this crescent shape. You want to look at your angle. It comes up almost as high as the bottom of the ear. Okay, you want to look at the distance out here and measure the shortest area, which is right about here between the ear and the outside of the head. So right about here, lined up with this dark shadow, is where the hood comes up. And then we can draw a line down to this line we brought up. And then the head goes off the page just like that. Okay, and it's hard to say if there's an area up here. That's something we can work on while we paint. The hairline kind of comes down Okay, now you can just do some final touch-ups. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to darken up all of my most important lines outside of the face here. Then you can take your eraser and kind of lighten up the areas that are the brightest. Okay, and I'm just going to finish up some of these lines from the sweatshirt. Okay, so that pretty much covers how to do a sketch for your paintings. Like I said, you want to look a lot at negative space. You want to look at areas outside of the face. You want to look at angles. Getting the angles right will really help you. Another thing is you want to look for things, relative areas, relative points, where the outside of the nose lines up relative to the eye and the mouth, how far the nostril goes up to the edge of the nose, different angles in the fingers, and different angles in the shirt. If you get a lot of your angles really close and your relative points close, you'll get the likeness that you need to create an effective portrait.